Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and attending this session. I'm Apurva Wadodkar, and I work for AutoDesk, where I manage a team responsible for creating foundational data products for enterprise-wide consumption. I also manage a BI Center of Excellence, data privacy, and data governance programs. Today, I want to really talk about this data governance program I established at Autodesk, which was solely focused on engineering excellence, right? So you can look at data governance programs from so many different vantage points, right? You can say it's a platform-centric governance, it's a operations-centric. The program I created was engineering-centric. And really, for you guys to appreciate what an engineer goes through, I want to show you the life of an engineer. There is so much really that bombards on our engineers from all directions. It gets overwhelming. There is information explosion coming, and look at the poor guy, right? Is he gonna? What are the different standards? And they keep changing. And we in data are all compliance centric so much. So the program I really created was for these poor people who, let's just streamline things for them and make it easier. So it's easier for them, and the cycle time reduces, their time to delivery is faster, and all those great things. So, and again, vision for any data program is, you want to position your data as a catalyst for that decision making. So vision is consistent, right, across flavors of data that you're managing. For data governance, however, my mission was to empower my engineering teams to meet that standard so they can publish these high quality data sets and help our business in turn, right? So it's a chain reaction that we wish to start. So now, before I read this slide, I want to really give you a little bit of background on how Autodesk is set up. Autodesk is a technology company, and so everybody is tech savvy, which is good, right? People are educated in technology. However, what it does is it gives rise to a lot of silos. So you will see 5 different order tables giving different flavors of orders, and nobody knows, which is source of truth, which is not good, right? In fact, things like this, they are coming in the middle of decision making rather than expediting those decisions. So that was a big problem at Autodesk. So what we did is, about 2 years ago, we started on this journey, 200 engineers working towards creating this marketplace of data products. That was the vision, and it's coming beautifully now. But you can imagine the scale of this. Only these 200 engineers are going to be ingesting data from all 40 enterprise systems we have, and then publish it so everybody in the company can, be customers to this data, so to speak. And then, you sort of centralize things also, and at the same time you democratize it because the analytics community can now take this. I like to call it tomato-potato layer, right? Fresh ingredients, keep it in the market, and then anybody picks it up, use it for your recipe. So that recipe piece of it was democratized. So our tech community is happy. They get to do what they want to do, build your reports, but then this is standard. So when we started this, you can imagine 200 people now moving towards something new. They needed direction. They almost felt like that engineer picture I showed in the beginning, and that had to be catered to. So there are a couple of things that I thought about as this is what my governance program is going to give these engineers, right? First of all, a single stop shop for all standards. And we'll come to what those standards were. But it's there, right there. And then we don't want to throw Bibles at them. Yeah, this is the 20-page policy document. Now go figure out what you have to do. Make sure everything is taken care of. That's not how you should treat your engineers, right? And so condensing that information, making it actionable, that was a big goal of the program. Second piece was, sometimes you shouldn't have to tell people what to do. You just create utilities for them, right? Privacy, for example, we should never ask anybody to understand privacy, just bake it into their design. And so utility creation was a big, sort of a hope for this program, I would say, at this point. And then finally, nobody woke up from the bed saying, today is the day I'm gonna do governance. Says nobody. And so how do you make them really excited about this, right? And so gamification of this process was extremely crucial. And I would say these were the top sort of principles I went along with in order to curate this program. Okay. So this is really the gist of it, and I want to spend a little time on explaining you what these standards were, and then we'll talk about the village it took to build this, right? So, you can see there are 7 principles here. It's not the traditional go put it in the catalog sort of a data governance program. It's very, very customized for our ecosystem. Data literacy, we put things like data modeling in it, the data modeling standards. And really, literacy starts with data model, right? The way you name your tables, the way you name your columns, the descriptions you put along with these tables is so critical for it to be readable and discoverable in the first place. So data modeling, data cataloging had to be there. Requirements gathering and design templates. Now this was crucial because, again, think of your supermarket, sort of a setup. Customers, and the customers in this case are your people in the employees of the company. They want to see repetitive, no matter the product they look at, it should look similar, including the documentation for it. They should be able to tell, oh, I go to this section number so-and-so, and I find the information this way. So that had to be standardized, right? And really give it a product sort of a flavor. You don't want to call something a product unless it's a product. You have to give it a respect. So that's what data literacy was all about. Platforms, again, platforms from the vantage point of engineers. So you're an engineer, these are the standard set of tools you'll be using for ETL. And there were some other things also in it. Especially, I'll give an example. We use Snowflake as our data warehousing tool. And the thing about Snowflake is your engineers should be educated on how the credits work. Otherwise, and literally this has happened, $40,000 shot up in a day. Some intern wrote some code and boom, $40,000 bill. That's never good. And even if it's not as dramatic as this, you need to know how to play around with those credits, what sort of code that you write will lead to that sort of explosion of credit consumption. So I really baked in that, you must know this, right, aspect into the program. Sourcing was a big one. Again, you don't want several teams to bombard your sales force and get that orders table so many times. It taxes the systems. And so the standard was that this is the team who's the sales team, who owns really the orders table, and they are the only ones who are going to ingest that only one time. Nobody else is going to be allowed to go and ingest data from Salesforce, and unless they go through these enterprise data hub 200 people team, right? And again, we were obviously organized. They're not just flat structure, but that was the idea about sourcing. CI/CD, don't have to talk too much. Operations, again, from handing over your work to the operations. Once you have that product in production, you have to, you can't just throw it across the wall and say, operations, you are now in charge. No, never gonna work. Because again, we are designating these as products, data products. It requires respect. And the respect is you make them shadow you, do the run books, do the KT, and make sure they are set for success. And all those standards went into operations. Quality, I'm gonna keep this for later because much of quality is automated. We don't want anybody to even think about quality because it's baked into the utilities we have provided. But there's one thing I'll talk about is ownership of quality. And this cannot be automated because this is, you are the owner of orders table in Salesforce. You are putting data in there. And I must have a contract with you saying, hey, you know what? That table, this is the table we are using. We are expecting this from you. If you change anything, make sure you let us know X days in advance so we can arrange for downstream changes, right? And this used to happen quite a bit because Salesforce is a whole operation, it's a transactional system and you have to change your data model. And so that handshake and really that contract has to be in place. I use the word contract loosely, but we really need that data to be consistent. So that was a big part of quality. We really audit our teams on, do you have ownerships across the lineage of final data product? Do you have full coverage of ownerships? Because one weak link can mean distrust in your final data because it's failing all the time and it's not consistent. So, and then security and compliance standard, privacy, security, and SOX compliance. Again, a lot of this baked into our structure, design structure. So once I had this, the basic idea ready, programs like this really cannot be done in a silo. So it was not enough that I did it with my team and now I'm gonna go and serve it to everybody. There's gonna be a huge problem in adoption. So for the sake of that, I went along on road shows and I gathered some support from my peers, from other leaders in the company that come build this with me, right? Here's the value proposition. We are ready to put in the work. I want you to come and curate this with me. And I'll tell you, something about governance scares people. And something about that coming your way as a mandate scares them more. And so it's always better to become a part of curating a program like this than that being thrown on you. So that helped quite a bit, I'll be honest, and use that tactic to gain support from people to really build this program. So I got now so many people working on this program, and not all of them reporting to me, right? They were all over the place. We had one champion for each principal and a list of SMEs around them. And those SMEs and champion would be the leader. They would curate these standards. And we were not doing anything from the scratch. So much of this is already there in those 20-page policy document we talked about. It was already there. Just take it, condense it, actionable. Those were the 3 rules I gave to each of my principal champions. And then I was the central editor to make sure that, oh, you have come up with 20 standards for data literacy? No, that's way too much. Nobody has time for this. Let's condense it. Let's make it shorter. Let's make it so people are not gonna start ignoring those standards. Too much is not good. And so that was my job. ChatGPT helped quite a bit. Oh yeah, it helped quite a bit in condensing, making it clearer. So use the tools that you have. Now, I want to talk about utilities, and especially quality. Now, if you are in data, extraction, transformation, and load process is your bread and butter, there are always the same sort of technical test cases that you have to execute on your data set, regardless of what that data set is, right? So we came up with 8 of these standard technical tests that would run every time a pipeline runs. And so things like simple things, that between, let's say your pipeline runs every day. Once the pipeline is running and it's at the final stage, we check that the data freshness is it really 1 day old data, or do you have data sitting in it which is 2 days old or 3 days old? That means your pipeline has failed, something has gone wrong. And so we check that. Second quality check, just for the sake of example here, is the counts of rows should not get garbled in the middle. And you know how that would happen? You have, let's say, responses coming from your customer survey responses, and you join that table with, you don't want to put email IDs of your customers there, so you anonymize it with an ID. And let's say that ID is not available in your dimension table. That row is gone, right? By the time it reaches the final publish layer, you'll not see that response because it cannot be tied back to a customer. And so we have to be alerted of things like this, which is eating up your data and it's not consistent. So there were 8 such things. There's some good ones there. LOV checks and null checks is pretty simple. You don't want things to fail, but you want to know that, oh, this is, not looking right. So that was the utilities. Same with privacy, by the way. We make sure, again, you have the utility where you say, this is my table, and here are the PII columns, and then the utility will mask those columns, publish it in the public layer, and the original data will go in private schema. And all the engineer has to do is use the utility and tell it that it's doing this, right? Just configuration. So compliance became pretty simple, easy for us. Same with finance. This is financial data. We're not going to publish it in public schemas. It's going to be private. There's a whole trading window, blacklist, workflow that kicks off once you have access to finance data, and so on. So those were the utilities. And again, this can be very custom to your space, Think of it, it's what's going to be useful. What is that code that people keep writing over and over? We want to create that into a utility. Okay, gamification. This is my favorite one, again, because nobody really gives much enthusiasm towards this program. And how do we make people do this? The first one is, these 100 or so standards we came up with. I could have put it in a Wikipedia or a boring document or something, go figure, right? But that's no fun. So we created a simple web application to host this. And the web application, as teams were onboarding, they would get their own space, and they would get to read that, and you make it look pretty. Right? It's consumable, readable, the fonts are important. We engaged our UX UI designer and made them build this so it would inspire people. Every time somebody says, okay, this particular standard I have implemented, they would get to check it. And as they go through the layers, it was like 3 levels in which the standards were divided into. 1 being lower maturity, 3 being your most matured in that space. And so as you reach 3, boom, you are a high maturity person, right? So, and that the app is going to show that to you. And you also publish leaderboards. Hey, why not, right? That's where the competition comes into place. Oh, this team has been on leaderboard twice in a row. How about that, right? And you can see the enthusiasm happen. Constant narrative is very important because programs like this can go and settle down. Initially, there's hype and people are going to be excited, but you want that narrative to be on and on and on. So I booked a 10-minute slot consistently on our monthly, all hands and such to talk about it. So we would bring an idea and we'd talk about it. We'd bring in some guests and different patterns, right? Point being, keep it in the conversation all the time. And then community of practice. This is again important. You want to give people, part of this. Oh, I did this some great POC on, let's say, getting data into streaming data into the database, and no other team is really using it because they don't have a use case for it. So this team has built now, let's say, whatever, right? Some POC they did. Now they can engage with us and tell, hey, these are good standards. Maybe we add those standards for real-time data ingestion into our standards. So people now know. It's very educational too. How do I do this? Oh, let's go to the site and see. This is how we do it. And then there will be obviously some user guides, and there will be a backing, but not right there in your face, only if you want to, right? So community of practice was really game changer for us. Awesome. So now, what's the biggest question that data governance is asked for? If anybody is here in data governance, what is one big question that comes from leadership? Any guesses? Yes. Yes! And you can never prove that value, because now I am supporting this person supports that person shows the decisions, and so how do I tie this, right? And so initially, it's all about setting expectations. Initially, if you see on the top, adoption rate, how many people are adopting the standards? And that is evident from the web app that I have, right? How many teams are onboarded? Second is how many teams are going through the maturity model. Where are we on quality? Where are we on data literacy? Have people hosted their data products in a catalog or not? And we can see all that through the app, because now app is giving me all great data back on how these several teams are working on adoption. Maturity model effectiveness is again very important, because we create maturity model, which is the standards, from certain viewpoint. And then engineers have some other grassroots levels problems. You have to address that. And so it's really critical you take their feedback through, I call it a engineering CSAT score, right? The effectiveness and feedback. So those were the initially those were the metrics that I was tracking. And now that we are in year 2, I'm tracking all these other metrics. And in fact, some of them we are still brainstorming on. First is observability score. 100% of your data products must be monitored. Otherwise, you don't know how good or bad your product is, how many errors are happening. So monitoring is a mandate. Have all the teams put it in place? If we have 200 data sets, do all those 200 data sets have some sort of an observability recording done? And we have a tool for that. So are they in that tool? That's the check. Quality score. Again, we have these 8 technical quality standards or utilities. Are they publishing their data set without calling that utility? That's a problem, because now you're running blind. You don't know what errors are happening, which is never good. Again, and I'll tell you, the biggest reason we created this enterprise data hub was to have trust in the data sets. Trust is lost the moment you keep your eyes closed and not even look at what the problems are. So quality score. Quality ownership coverage, what I talked about, every part in lineage must have. And this is sort of manual at this point. We are still brainstorming on how can we automate this somehow. If you guys have ideas, I would be happy to brainstorm a little bit. Compliance score, are there any, and we actually do the scans, are there any columns that look like email, names, address in a public schema? If we find that, it's, we flag that. So, availability and performance score. How long does your pipeline take to run? The minimum, the median, and the maximum. To me, this is so crucial, because what if your business asks you, can you make this instead of daily a 30-minute run? Because this will be helpful to me. Can I? The metric will give me that answer. And another thing that will also happen is, oh, my variation is sometimes it takes 2 minutes and sometimes it's taking like 2 hours. What's going on? That warrants an alarm, right? So if I'm a manager or managing that team, I need to know what's going on with my pipelines. So that's the score. Availability is, as it speaks for itself, how many failures are happening in your pipelines, and how much. It's basic standard uptime calculation, right? So discoverability score is every data set is associated with a description. And again, we tell them, write some more, write a paragraph. Don't just say monosyllables and short. This is a date. Yeah, we see it's a date, but what, right? So those, and we are seeing if we can use Gen AI to see the quality of these descriptions. We are not quite there yet, but it's a thought. And then adoption score is important. This is, I tell you, if anything you call victory in data, is your data is being adopted, it's being used. Otherwise, it's of no use to me. Seriously. You can have all those great metrics and nobody is using it. So we like to keep a very close eye on adoption, which teams are using it. And sometimes you don't even know, oh, this team suddenly has started to use it. Let me go introduce myself. Right? And that also brings in more, you can make a more difference if you know what other problems are there. So I think that catches those sort of hidden consumers of your data as well. And then you can build a story, by the way. Oh, my data is so awesome. It's being used by so many people. And these are the, you get that story out of them. How are you using this data? What are you doing with it? And so more glory for you in that case. Okay, so this is summary of my data governance program. You start with a maturity model. The governance council does that work, creates maturity model. We create reusable code. We call it utilities. You can call it whatever, but it's reusable. And then we do audits. Audits is important. Either you automate audits or do it manually, whatever it is. Audits are important because then that keeps people on the toes. After a while, people, okay, take it for granted, but not really doing the, implementing standards. You have to keep an eye on it. So I have an audit manager, by the way. He would go and do audits. And we tell people, here's the plan for this fiscal year, and we'll be auditing you on these dates. So they are prepared. And one thing I'll tell you is don't just publish the plans for people to ram down their throats. So I work with their managers and I ensure that, okay, this is looking fine to you, this is doable. You have to have that dialogue. And I think that's where some of the governance programs become a little bit too much, that you're forgetting the community aspect of it. And you're just, going like a freight train. So don't do that. And teams do self-assessment. It's not my job that your product needs to be high quality. It's your job. I am helping you. Be thankful to me. So all that flavor has to come, and all that comes through communication, really. It's how you approach this. And again, no maturity model can be constant. You have to keep evolving it. And so we sort of evolve it once a year at least, and then publish the latest maturity model. Okay, so now before I leave you, I want to give you some crash course tips on what I have learned personally on implementing a program like this. And this, I think you can implement these learnings on any other program which has this sort of a big, wide, you don't have authority over them, but you have to get them to do it sort of projects. First of all is create that, create your governance program for your team. Processes are not, you're not created for processes are created for you. And so I would not copy paste somebody else's method of doing governance and bring it into my my company without customizations. I like it so we have maximum value. This is again, It's all in the narrative. You don't want people to run away from the program. No, not me, not me. Instead, what we did? Simple thing, and people have FOMO. Please capture, those mindsets people have. Is in the first wave, we are only taking few teams. We want to see how the program works, and in the pilot, we'll take only few. We have only 2 positions open. Who would and literally, seriously, people will say, let me be the first one. Because all the glory, right? FOMO. That was just the trick I used. So, communication must happen in all directions. And I would not underestimate the pushback from grassroots. You can go talk to a VP. VP will be, awesome program, let's do it. And then by the time it trickles down to an engineer will not do it. What are you going to do? Chase 200 people? It's not practical. And so it's important that you help them make up their minds and excite at the grassroots levels if your program has to sustain. And so I wrote 2 narratives, one for the leaders, one for my peers and leaders, and one for the engineers themselves, that, hey, you know what? What are you doing today? If you want to get access, do you know exactly which form to fill? Oh no, we ping somebody, we call somebody. Guess what? The program is going to give you that information. All you have to do is log in and you have all the information there. Which templates to use, which teams to call, right? All those great things. And now they are excited. Talk in terms of what would excite them. So 2 narratives. Finally, again, don't ram them through this. It's a lot of work. And it's a lot of work on top of the deliverables they have to provide. And so it's important you give them adequate amount of time to, in these 2 quarters, we are going to do these 3 principles at a level 3. We want all the teams to be at level 3. And so give them some breathing room. Gamify the program. This, I'll tell you, my program would have failed without this. And so I got in some interns, literally. Interns built this whole website and web application in which this was hosted. Ultimately, they were so smart, I took them in the team, made them full-time. But regardless, you want to keep something very simple, and it just changes the nature of the program because it's now exciting. And finally, build a community. Community is so important. People must feel like they are a part of this for it to succeed. You alone are gonna not go very far. So yeah, that was all the information I have for today. You can catch me on LinkedIn. I would love to take some questions now. I think we have some time. Yes. I'll give you this.
Thank you. In your experience, what are the prerequisites for starting a data governance program? Like, for example, do you need to have an understanding of your data and the domains? Do you need to have the data stewards already figured out? Do you need to have an understanding of your platforms? What do you feel is most important before you get started?
That's a great question. You don't need to know your data to start a program because this is a process. But you need to know the pain points that engineers have to go through. Right? You have to have worked in the ecosystem, in my opinion, to know, because how do you otherwise know that we need a requirements objective under this principle? You know why we put that? Because we, in Data Hub, we wanted that none of the data products should come into the data warehouse unless it had at least one use case associated with it. So there is no creating swamp here. We are not creating swamp. Is somebody wanting to pull that data? That's when the data comes in. Tell us how you're using it. So you need to have that knowledge of that need and process more so than, what is exactly happening in data? It's just the process. That's what I would say. If you have knowledge of data, that's fabulous. And I think we as data people must have knowledge of data. So, yeah.
Started being a part of a data governance program at where I work, Little Caesars, and to kind of answer your question, we start off with creating the business class tree first, and then from there just getting with the what we considered our data owners and data stewards and other key stakeholders, we were able to solidify a good number of terms, business terms, and then from there we were able to, I guess, kind of set the pipeline of what terms can we create policies for with our data from there.
Interesting. So, and that's a way, do what works for you, right? If you know all your KPIs up front, good for you. Go backwards. That's fine too. That's fabulous.
Purva, congratulations, because this is so incredibly hard to do, especially within organizations and enterprises the size of Autodesk. I think what's been incredible to actually hear from your talk is the aspect of community and change management, which most data governance folks actually ignore because it's a mandate, and then it's shoved down people's throats, as you mentioned, and then adoption becomes there's so much resistance to kind of the adoption. So truly, I think it's remarkable. On the flip side, I'm also wondering how you've handled the process of ensuring that there is remediation in place for the issues that your team is identifying, right? And prioritization of those, because typically there's so much on the engineer's plates that it becomes hard to essentially ensure that the right data products are being prioritized, and that ownership. You touched on this a little bit. How have you driven ownership of the remediation and the change management process? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah. So that's another great question, which I probably didn't talk about, is who decides what data sets to come in the first place? Yeah, if you decide, then, hey, this is how I'm going to do the processes on it. But we have engineering pods in our company. Engineer, product manager, and design. In design, it's basically analytics. So these pods work together, and it's the product manager that goes have all the conversations with different stakeholders and understand, okay, we need these sort of general data and for these reasons. And so we sort of make it their responsibility, because I'll tell you, governance cannot be everywhere, and then you're stretching yourself thin. Now you suddenly want to have knowledge of sales and finance and marketing and customer success, everything, which is not possible. So you decide what you need to democratize and what you need to centralize, and that has helped us quite a bit, because it's a lot that goes on, and several hours of conversations with the domain leaders to figure out what would be helpful. So the what part is, how part is this. What part, you're going to decide that. So, any other thoughts or comments, or the way you guys are implementing governance in your space? I'd love to hear.
I have a question. Earlier you said that you have this come build this with me approach, and you mentioned value propositions that you gave to these people to help them come build. Do you have examples of those value propositions?
So yeah, so I talked about two narratives, right? One for the leaders and one for the engineering groups. For the leaders, it was pretty straightforward that, hey, we are building this, this data, enterprise data hub, and every team is gonna be disconnected because it's domain, every team is one domain. And so how are you gonna decide that, is this team using the same similar things like this team? We need a central body to make this enterprise data hub a success. And so, and then how do you get that feedback channel? Right now, yes, the data sets are being pumped out. How do you know how good they are, how high quality they are, how much trust there is? How are you going to capture that data? Yes, even if you today tell that, oh, these are the standards you have to implement. How do you get that feedback that they are actually implementing it? And so that's where the governance comes into play, is we will give you a bird's eye view of all the data products that are being published in this hub marketplace, and you will know at a glance what's going on. That would be impossible without this program. So that's the value proposition for leaders, or even my peers who want to see, who are not really managing, they're not managers of the team. They have somebody on the team who's managing the Scrum team. And so, so it's important that for them, the narrative for the managers is also that you get visibility into everything that's going on. And we are going to add some other things like how many times we are doing, putting something in production, right? And that's not to say that you have to keep putting little things in production, but the real desire there is don't make it a big bang and hence high risk. So risk is the factor here in having, frequent releases. So for the engineers, it's important they understand this. We are not making you do, for the sake of checking, check 50 releases this month. No, it's how high risk was it. It will reduce your chances of failure and increase chances of success. So that dialogue, like I said, right, this is a dialogue. Any other thoughts? I think we are about time. A couple of more minutes. Yes.
I have a question. Will we have access to this PowerPoint or this presentation?
I am not sure, but I think you might.
Okay.
Let's talk about it because I was wondering too. How many of you have programs like this in your company? Just a show of hands. Obviously you do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And sometimes, you have to right size it also. You don't want an elaborate program like this if you have like 5 people working on the project. Then you just have a conversation, just talk it through, right? But if it's a bigger team, you need something really standardized and formal in place. So, well, thank you so much, everybody. This was amazing to talk to you about this.